Captain Marcus Chen pressed his back against the corroded metal wall, listening to the heavy footsteps of the Krillian death squad echoing through the abandoned mining station. Blood trickled from a gash above his left eye, and his plasma rifle hummed with barely 20% charge remaining. 3 days ago, this had been a simple extraction job. Now it felt like a suicide mission. The target sat huddled behind a pile of twisted debris 10 meters away. Prince Zethkara of the Vorthak Empire looked nothing like the proud alien royalty Marcus had expected. Instead of ceremonial robes and gleaming scales, the prince wore torn prisoner rags. His normally iridescent blue skin had faded to a sickly gray, and one of his forearms hung useless at his side. The Krillians had not been gentle during his 3-month captivity. Marcus checked his chronometer. The extraction window would close in 47 minutes. After that, the Krillian fleet would arrive in system, and even his modified corvette wouldn't be fast enough to escape their hunters. He had to move now, but 6 heavily armed Krillians stood between them and the docking bay. "Human," Prince Zethkara whispered, his voice carrying the melodic undertones typical of his species. "You should leave me. My people, they will not pay the ransom anyway. I am the 3rd son, worthless to the throne." Marcus glanced at the alien prince, noting the bitter resignation in his large golden eyes. The Vorthak were known throughout the galaxy for their rigid hierarchy and cold pragmatism. 3rd sons of the royal family were traditionally given minor administrative roles and forgotten, but Marcus had taken the job, and he always finished what he started. "Not happening, Your Highness," Marcus replied, checking his weapons charge level again. "Besides, I've already spent the advance payment on ship repairs." The prince's mandibles clicked, and what Marcus had learned was the Vorthak equivalent of surprised laughter. "You risk your life for money? How wonderfully human." Before Marcus could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps grew louder. The Krillians had found their trail. These weren't just any soldiers either. Their equipment bore the crimson markings of the Death's Head Legion, the Krillian Empire's most feared special forces unit. Each warrior stood over 7 feet tall, their exoskeletons gleaming with biomechanical enhancements. Marcus had fought Krillians before. They were stronger, faster, and more durable than humans. But they were also predictable, relying on overwhelming force rather than tactics. That was their weakness. He pulled a small device from his belt, a gravity mine he'd been saving for emergencies. If he could channel the Krillians through the narrow corridor ahead, the confined space would work in his favor. The mine would disorient them long enough for him and the prince to reach the service tunnels. "When I signal, we run for the maintenance shaft behind you," Marcus whispered. "Can you move with that arm?" Prince Zethkara straightened, wincing as he shifted his weight. "I am Vorthak. We endure." The first Krillian rounded the corner, its massive pulse cannon sweeping the area. Marcus waited until 3 more appeared before activating the gravity mine. The device flew through the air and attached itself to the corridor ceiling. A second later, a sphere of twisted gravity erupted, slamming the Krillians into the walls and floor with bone-crushing force. "Now!" Marcus shouted. They ran. Prince Zethkara moved with surprising grace despite his injuries, his 3 functional arms helping him navigate the debris-strewn floor. Behind them, the Krillians roared in anger and pain, but the gravity distortion would keep them disoriented for at least 90 seconds. The maintenance shaft was a tight fit, even for Marcus. For the larger Vorthak prince, it would be agony with his wounded arm. But it was their only route to the docking bay that didn't go through the main corridors where more Krillians waited. They crawled through the narrow space, the prince's labored breathing echoing in the confined tunnel. Marcus tried not to think about how much time they had left. Every second counted now. "Human," the prince gasped as they reached a junction in the tunnel system. "If we survive this, my father will want to reward you. But you must understand he is not generous with outsiders. He will offer you the minimum honor required by our customs." Marcus paused, studying the alien's face in the dim emergency lighting. "And what exactly does that mean?" Prince Zethkara's golden eyes reflected a mixture of gratitude and something that looked almost like pity. "Marriage to my sister, Princess Lyrazeth. She is considered unmarriageable by our standards. Father has been trying to find someone to take her for years." The sound of cutting tools echoed from behind them. The Krillians had found the maintenance shaft entrance and were burning their way through the sealed hatch. Marcus pushed forward, processing what the prince had just told him. An alien princess bride as payment for a rescue mission. He'd heard stranger things in his 15 years as a freelance mercenary, but this was definitely in the top 5. "What's wrong with her?" Marcus asked as they reached the final stretch of tunnel leading to the docking bay. The prince was quiet for a long moment. "She thinks too much. Questions everything. Refuses to accept traditional roles. In Vorthak society, these are problematic traits in a female." Marcus almost smiled despite their desperate situation. "Sounds like my kind of woman." They emerged from the maintenance shaft into the docking bay just as alarms began blaring throughout the station. Marcus's ship, the Wanderer's Dream, sat exactly where he'd left her. But now Krillian troops were swarming toward their position from 3 different entrances. The extraction window was closing fast, and their fight for survival was just beginning. Captain Marcus Chen pressed his back against the corroded metal wall, listening to the heavy footsteps of the Krillian death squad echoing through the abandoned mining station. Blood trickled from a gash above his left eye, and his plasma rifle hummed with barely 20% charge remaining. 3 days ago, this had been a simple extraction job. Now it felt like a suicide mission. The target sat huddled behind a pile of twisted debris 10 meters away. Prince Zethkar of the Vorthak Empire looked nothing like the proud alien royalty Marcus had expected. Instead of ceremonial robes and gleaming scales, the prince wore torn prisoner rags. His normally iridescent blue skin had faded to a sickly gray, and one of his 4 arms hung useless at his side. The Krillians had not been gentle during his 3-month captivity. Marcus checked his chronometer. The extraction window would close in 47 minutes. After that, the Krillian fleet would arrive in system, and even his modified corvette wouldn't be fast enough to escape their hunters. He had to move now, but 6 heavily armed Krillians stood between them and the docking bay. "Human," Prince Zethkara whispered, his voice carrying the melodic undertones typical of his species. "You should leave me. My people. They will not pay the ransom anyway. I am the 3rd son, worthless to the throne." Marcus glanced at the alien prince, noting the bitter resignation in his large golden eyes. The Vorthak were known throughout the galaxy for their rigid hierarchy and cold pragmatism. 3rd sons of the royal family were traditionally given minor administrative roles and forgotten. But Marcus had taken the job, and he always finished what he started. "Not happening, Your Highness," Marcus replied, checking his weapon's charge level again. "Besides, I've already spent the advance payment on ship repairs." The prince's mandibles clicked in what Marcus had learned was the Vorthak equivalent of surprised laughter. "You risk your life for money? How wonderfully human." Before Marcus could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps grew louder. The Krillians had found their trail. These weren't just any soldiers either. Their equipment bore the crimson markings of the Death's Head Legion, the Krillian Empire's most feared special forces unit. Each warrior stood over 7 feet tall, their exoskeletons gleaming with biomechanical enhancements. Marcus had fought Krillians before. They were stronger, faster, and more durable than humans, but they were also predictable, relying on overwhelming force rather than tactics. That was their weakness. He pulled a small device from his belt, a gravity mine he'd been saving for emergencies. If he could channel the Krillians through the narrow corridor ahead, the confined space would work in his favor. The mine would disorient them long enough for him and the prince to reach the service tunnels. "When I signal, we run for the maintenance shaft behind you," Marcus whispered. "Can you move with that arm?" Prince Zethkara straightened, wincing as he shifted his weight. "I am Vorthak. We endure." The first Krillian rounded the corner, its massive pulse cannon sweeping the area. Marcus waited until 3 more appeared before activating the gravity mine. The device flew through the air and attached itself to the corridor ceiling. A second later, a sphere of twisted gravity erupted, slamming the Krillians into the walls and floor with bone-crushing force. "Now!" Marcus shouted. They ran. Prince Zethkara moved with surprising grace despite his injuries, his 3 functional arms helping him navigate the debris-strewn floor. Behind them, the Krillians roared in anger and pain, but the gravity distortion would keep them disoriented for at least 90 seconds. The maintenance shaft was a tight fit even for Marcus. For the larger Vorthak prince, it would be agony with his wounded arm, but it was their only route to the docking bay that didn't go through the main corridors where more Krillians waited. They crawled through the narrow space, the prince's labored breathing echoing in the confined tunnel. Marcus tried not to think about how much time they had left. Every second counted now. "Human," the prince gasped as they reached a junction in the tunnel system. If we survive this, my father will want to reward you. But you must understand he is not generous with outsiders. He will offer you the minimum honor required by our customs. Marcus paused, studying the alien's face in the dim emergency lighting. And what exactly does that mean? Princess Kara's golden eyes reflected a mixture of gratitude and something that looked almost like pity. Marriage to my sister, Princess Lyrazeth. She is considered unmarriageable by our standards. Father has been trying to find someone to take her for years. The sound of cutting tools echoed from behind them. The Krillians had found the maintenance shaft entrance and were burning their way through the sealed hatch. Marcus pushed forward, processing what the prince had just told him. An alien princess bride as payment for a rescue mission. He'd heard stranger things in his 15 years as a freelance mercenary, but this was definitely in the top 5. What's wrong with her? Marcus asked as they reached the final stretch of tunnel leading to the docking bay. The prince was quiet for a long moment. She thinks too much, questions everything, refuses to accept traditional roles. In Vorthak society, these are problematic traits in a female. Marcus almost smiled despite their desperate situation. Sounds like my kind of woman. They emerged from the maintenance shaft into the docking bay just as alarms began blaring throughout the station. Marcus's ship, the Wanderer's Dream, sat exactly where he'd left her. But now Krillian troops were swarming toward their position from 3 different entrances. The extraction window was closing fast, and their fight for survival was just beginning. Marcus studied the Emperor's face on the holographic display, noting the calculating intelligence behind those golden eyes. This was a ruler who had built an empire spanning 12 star systems through careful political maneuvering and strategic warfare. Every word would be weighed and measured. Your Majesty, Marcus began, inclining his head respectfully, I ask only for fair payment for services rendered. Your son's life is valuable, but I am a simple mercenary with simple needs. Emperor Vorthketh's mandibles twitched in what might have been amusement. Simple? You infiltrated a Krillian stronghold, defeated their elite forces, and extracted my son from certain death. Such actions demand more than mere payment. Prince Zethkara leaned forward slightly. Father, Captain Chen is unmarried and has served with great honor. Perhaps a formal alliance would benefit the Empire. The Emperor's eyes narrowed as he caught his son's meaning. Indeed. Captain Chen, I offer you the hand of my daughter, Princess Lyrazeth, in marriage. She will bring a substantial dowry and elevate your status considerably. Marcus felt a chill despite the ship's climate control. The way the Emperor spoke about his daughter, like she was a commodity to be traded rather than a person, reminded him why he preferred working alone in deep space. But refusing an imperial marriage offer would be a grave insult, one that could turn the Vorthak Empire from neutral to hostile in human space. I am honored by your offer, Your Majesty, Marcus replied carefully. However, I should perhaps meet the princess before any formal arrangements are made. The Emperor's expression hardened. You question my judgment in this matter? Not at all. But marriage is a partnership that requires compatibility. I simply wish to ensure that both the princess and I are suitable for each other. Behind the Emperor, Marcus caught a glimpse of movement. A figure approached the imperial throne, and Marcus got his first look at Princess Lyrazeth. She was tall even by Vorthak standards, her iridescent scales shimmering between deep blue and silver. Unlike the ornate court dress her father wore, she was dressed in practical military attire, complete with sidearm. Father, she said, her voice carrying a musical quality that seemed to make the ship's speakers resonate. Perhaps you should consult me before arranging my marriage to a stranger. The Emperor's 4 arms tensed, a clear sign of displeasure. Daughter, this is not your concern. The alliance has been decided. Princess Lyrazeth moved into full view of the transmission, her golden eyes fixing on Marcus with keen intelligence. Captain Chen, I presume. I understand you rescued my brother from the Krillians. I did, Your Highness, Marcus replied, meeting her gaze directly, though he proved quite capable of taking care of himself once we reached safety. Interesting. Most humans I've encountered tend to exaggerate their own accomplishments. She turned to her father. What exactly are the terms of this proposed marriage? The Emperor's mandibles clicked in irritation. The terms are what I decide them to be. You will marry Captain Chen, provide him with heirs, and honor the alliance between our species. Marcus watched the princess's expression carefully. Her face remained diplomatically neutral, but he could see the anger building in her eyes. Prince Zethkara had not exaggerated about his sister's personality. "And what does Captain Chen gain from this arrangement?" she asked, aside from a wife who was given no choice in the matter. "Lyrazeth," the Emperor warned, his voice dropping to a dangerous octave. But the princess pressed on. "I am curious about my prospective husband's motivations. Does he seek political advantage, wealth, or is he simply content to accept whatever prize is offered?" Marcus found himself impressed despite the awkward situation. She was testing him, trying to determine what kind of man he was before her father could force them into marriage. It was a dangerous game to play with an autocratic ruler watching, but she was playing it anyway. "Your Highness," Marcus said, "I sought only to complete my mission and return your brother safely. I had no knowledge of any marriage arrangements until a few minutes ago." "How refreshing." An honest answer. Her eyes glinted with something that might have been approval. "And what are your thoughts on marriage to someone you've never met?" The Emperor stood abruptly. "Enough. Lyrazeth, you will not question this decision further. Captain Chen has proven his worth, and this alliance will strengthen the Empire." "Will it?" she challenged. "Or will it simply rid you of a daughter who embarrasses you by thinking for herself?" The transmission chamber fell silent except for the low hum of machinery. Marcus realized he was witnessing a family conflict that had been brewing for years. The princess was clearly brilliant and capable, but she lived in a society that valued compliance over competence in females. Her father saw marriage to an outsider as a solution to his problem child. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, breaking the tense silence, "perhaps we could arrange a meeting when I arrive at Vorthak Prime. A chance for the princess and me to speak privately before any final decisions are made." The Emperor considered this for a long moment. "Very well, but understand, Captain, that refusing this marriage after accepting the rescue contract would be seen as a grave insult to the Empire." The threat was clear. Marcus nodded acknowledgement, but his attention was focused on Princess Lyrazeth. She was studying him with those intelligent golden eyes, and he had the distinct impression that she was seeing more than most people bothered to look for. "I look forward to our meeting, Captain Chen," she said. "I have many questions about human culture and military tactics. I trust you will find our conversations educational." The transmission ended, leaving Marcus and Prince Zethkara alone in the ship's command deck. The prince was quiet for several minutes before speaking. "She likes you," he said finally. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "How can you possibly tell that from one conversation? She called you by name instead of simply human. She acknowledged your honesty." And she smiled. She smiled. "When?" "When you suggested meeting privately before the marriage decision." It was very subtle, but she smiled. "My sister has not smiled at a potential suitor in, well, ever." Marcus settled back in his pilot's chair, staring out at the swirling colors of hyperspace. In 6 days he would arrive at Vorthak Prime to meet his potential bride. A brilliant, strong-willed alien princess who was considered unmarriageable by her own people. "Tell me," he said to the prince, "what happens to Vorthak marriages that don't work out?" Prince Zethkara's mandibles clicked nervously. "Divorce is not traditionally accepted in our culture. Marriage is considered a permanent alliance between families. And if the bride refuses the marriage entirely, she would be exiled from the empire. Stripped of her titles, her inheritance, everything, she would become a person without a people." Marcus absorbed this information quietly. Princess Lyrazeth was trapped between an unwanted marriage and complete exile. No wonder she had seemed to be testing him during their brief conversation. Her entire future depended on what kind of man he turned out to be. The ship's AI chimed softly. "Captain, shall I prepare the guest quarters for Prince Zethkara?" "Yes, Athena. And send a message to the medical bay. His arm needs proper treatment." As the prince headed for medical attention, Marcus remained on the command deck, watching the stars blur past. 6 days to decide whether to marry an alien princess he'd never met, or potentially make an enemy of an entire interstellar empire. He'd faced worse odds before, but never with such personal stakes involved. 3 days into the journey to Vorthak Prime, Marcus found Prince Zethkara in the ship's small observation lounge, staring out at the swirling colors of hyperspace. The prince's injured arm was healing well thanks to the Wanderer's Dreams medical bay, but his expression remained troubled. "Having second thoughts about going home?" Marcus asked, settling into the chair across from him. The prince's mandibles clicked softly. "I have been thinking about what awaits us. My father is not a cruel man, but he is pragmatic above all else. He sees problems as things to be solved efficiently, without consideration for the feelings of those involved. Marcus poured himself coffee from the lounge's dispenser. And your sister is a problem he's been trying to solve for a while. Exactly. Lyrazeth is brilliant, but she refuses to conform to expectations. She has turned down 17 marriage proposals from suitable Vorthak nobles. Each rejection embarrasses the imperial family further. 17? Marcus raised an eyebrow. What was wrong with them? Prince Zethkara counted on his fingers. The first was intellectually inferior and bored her. The second tried to forbid her from continuing her military research. The third actually suggested she undergo neural conditioning to make her more compliant. Neural conditioning, a process that can alter personality traits. Completely voluntary, of course, but the suggestion deeply offended her. The prince paused. The others failed for similar reasons. They wanted a decorative wife, not an equal partner. Marcus sipped his coffee, processing this information. What does she want in a husband? Someone who challenges her intellectually. Someone who respects her capabilities rather than being threatened by them. Someone who sees her as a person rather than a prize to be won. The prince looked at Marcus meaningfully. She wants what any intelligent being wants, to be valued for who she is, not what others expect her to be. The ship's AI interrupted their conversation. Captain, incoming transmission from Vorthak Prime. It appears to be from Princess Lyrazeth herself. Marcus and the prince exchanged glances. Put it through to the observation lounge, Athena. The holographic display activated, showing Princess Lyrazeth in what appeared to be a private study. She was dressed in casual robes, her scales showing the deep blue coloration that indicated relaxation in Vorthak physiology. Books and data tablets were scattered across the desk behind her. Captain Chen, she said, inclining her head formally, I hope you don't mind my contacting you directly. I thought we should speak before you arrive. Not at all, Your Highness. Though I'm surprised your father allows private communications. Her mandibles twitched in amusement. My father doesn't know about this conversation. I have certain technical skills that he underestimates. Prince Zethkara leaned forward. Sister, you hacked the Imperial communication array? Please, it wasn't even challenging. The security protocols were designed by males who assumed no female would have the technical knowledge to bypass them. She turned her attention back to Marcus. Captain, I understand you've had time to consider our situation. I'm curious about your thoughts. Marcus appreciated her directness. Honestly? I think you're getting a raw deal. Being married off to solve your father's political problems isn't exactly fair to you. And yet you haven't refused the arrangement. Refusing would insult your father and potentially create problems between the Empire and human space. But more importantly, it would leave you in an even worse position than you're already in. Princess Lyrazeth studied his face carefully. You're concerned about my welfare? How unexpected. Why unexpected? Most males see marriage as acquisition. They focus on what they gain rather than the impact on their prospective bride. She paused. Tell me, Captain, what do you know about human Vorthak physiological compatibility? The question caught Marcus off guard. I honestly haven't researched that aspect yet. I have. Extensively. Her scales shifted to a slightly more golden hue, indicating mild embarrassment. Vorthak and human reproductive systems are completely incompatible. We could never produce offspring together. Prince Zethkara's eyes widened. Lyrazeth, you didn't tell father this? He never asked. He simply assumed that marriage would result in heirs to cement the alliance. She turned back to Marcus. Does this change your perspective on the arrangement? Marcus considered the implications. It certainly changes the political aspect. Without heirs, the marriage becomes purely symbolic. Exactly, which means any marriage between us would be based on personal compatibility rather than dynastic obligations. Her golden eyes fixed on his. I've been researching you as well, Captain Chen. Your military record is impressive. Decorated service in the Colonial Marine Corps, followed by 15 years as an independent operative. You've never married or maintained long-term relationships. My lifestyle doesn't lend itself to stable relationships, Marcus admitted. Or perhaps you simply haven't found someone who could match your intellectual and professional standards. She leaned forward slightly. I have a proposition for you, Captain. I'm listening. Marry me, but as a partnership rather than a traditional Vorthak union. We maintain separate quarters, pursue our individual interests, and present a united front only when political necessity requires it. In return, I gain protection from further marriage arrangements, and you gain access to Vorthak technology and resources that could benefit your mercenary operations. Marcus found himself intrigued, despite the unusual nature of the proposal. What about your father? He's expecting a traditional marriage. My father expects the appearance of a traditional marriage. As long as we fulfill our public duties and don't embarrass the imperial family, the private details of our arrangement are irrelevant to him. Prince Zethkara looked between them with growing amazement. Sister, you're proposing a marriage of convenience. A political alliance disguised as romance. I'm proposing a partnership between equals, she corrected. Something neither of us could achieve within the constraints of our respective societies. Marcus set down his coffee cup and studied the alien princess. She was offering him something unprecedented, a marriage that would give him access to advanced alien technology and political protection while allowing him to maintain his independence. In return, she would gain freedom from her society's expectations while keeping her royal status. There's one problem with your plan, Marcus said, which is, what happens if we actually start to like each other? For the first time since they'd begun communicating, Princess Lyrazeth smiled genuinely. Then we renegotiate the terms. The transmission ended, leaving Marcus and Prince Zethkara staring at the empty holographic display. The prince was the first to speak. She just proposed marriage on her own terms to a human she's never met in person, he said wonderingly. Either my sister has completely lost her mind, or she's more desperate to escape father's control than I realized. Marcus stood and walked to the observation window, watching the hypnotic patterns of hyperspace. Or she's exactly the kind of person who would appeal to a mercenary who spent his entire adult life avoiding conventional relationships. You're actually considering this? Your sister is intelligent, capable, and honest about what she wants. She's not trying to change me or control me. She's proposing a partnership based on mutual benefit and respect. Marcus turned to face the prince. When was the last time you heard of a marriage proposal that made that much sense? Prince Zethkara's mandibles clicked in what Marcus was beginning to recognize as Vorthak laughter. Never. But then again, neither of you is exactly conventional. 3 days later, the Wanderer's dream dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Vorthak system. Ahead of them, Vorthak Prime gleamed like a blue-green jewel, its surface dotted with the geometric patterns of advanced cities. Orbital platforms and defense stations surrounded the planet in carefully planned formations. Impressive, Marcus murmured, studying the displays. Wait until you see the capital, Prince Zethkara said, and meet my sister in person. I suspect you're both in for some surprises. The Imperial Palace of Vorthak Prime rose from the planet's surface like a crystalline mountain, its faceted walls catching and reflecting the light of the system's twin suns. As the Wanderer's dream descended toward the designated landing platform, Marcus counted at least 40 defensive positions built into the palace's structure. The Vorthak clearly took security seriously. Nervous? Prince Zethkara asked as they completed their final approach. Marcus checked his dress uniform one last time. I've infiltrated Krillian fortresses and faced down pirate fleets. I think I can handle a dinner with your family. You've never met my father in person, the prince replied ominously, or my sister for that matter. Holographic conversations are quite different from face-to-face encounters. The ship touched down with barely a whisper, and Marcus could see the formal reception committee waiting on the platform. Emperor Vorthketh stood at the center, his ceremonial armor gleaming with precious metals and battle honors. To his left stood an older Vorthak female who must be the Empress, her scales bearing the deep purple coloration of advanced age and wisdom. And to the Emperor's right, Princess Lyrazeth was even more imposing in person than she had appeared in the holographic transmissions. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her scales shifting between silver and deep blue depending on the angle of the light. Her dress was formal but practical, and Marcus noted the subtle bulge of a concealed weapon beneath her robes. A warrior princess indeed. Remember, Prince Zethkara whispered as they prepared to disembark. Formal protocol requires you to approach within 3 meters, then wait for father to acknowledge you. Don't look directly at the Empress until she speaks to you first, and whatever you do, don't touch my sister until the betrothal ceremony is complete. Marcus nodded, straightening his shoulders. Anything else I should know? Pray that Lyrazeth likes you. If she doesn't, this evening will be very unpleasant for everyone involved. They walked down the ship's ramp together, Prince Zethkara moving with the fluid grace of nobility returning home. Marcus maintained a respectful distance behind, aware that dozens of eyes were evaluating his every movement. Emperor Vorthketh stepped forward as they approached. "Third son, you have returned safely." "Yes, father, thanks to Captain Chen's skill and courage." Prince Zethkara gestured toward Marcus. "I owe him my life." The Emperor's 4 golden eyes fixed on Marcus with uncomfortable intensity. "Captain Chen, your reputation precedes you. I am told you are a warrior of exceptional capability." "I do my best, Your Majesty," Marcus replied, maintaining the proper 3-meter distance. "Modesty, an admirable trait." The Emperor's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Tell me, do you find our world beautiful?" It was clearly a test of some kind. Marcus glanced around at the crystalline spires, the perfectly manicured gardens, the mathematical precision of the architecture. "It's magnificent, Your Majesty, but I suspect its beauty lies as much in its people as in its buildings," diplomatically answered. The Emperor turned slightly. "My daughter, Princess Lyrazeth." She stepped forward and Marcus got his first close look at her face. Her features were delicate by Vorthak standards, her golden eyes bright with intelligence and something that might have been amusement. When she spoke, her voice carried the same musical quality he remembered from their conversations. "Captain Chen, welcome to Vorthak Prime. I trust your journey was comfortable?" "Very much so, Your Highness. Your brother proved to be excellent company. Did he tell you embarrassing stories about my childhood?" Her mandibles twitched in that subtle smile he was learning to recognize. "Only the most flattering ones," Marcus replied, earning what sounded like a genuine laugh from the princess. The Empress stepped forward, her ancient eyes studying Marcus with keen perception. "So, this is the human who would marry into our family. You are smaller than I expected." "Empress," Marcus said, bowing his head respectfully, "I am honored by your consideration." "Consideration?" The Empress's scale shifted to a more golden hue. "Young man, I have been considering you since my son's first transmission. Your military records, your psychological profiles, your genetic compatibility studies. I know more about you than you might think." Marcus felt a chill. "Genetic compatibility studies?" Princess Lyrazeth caught his eye and made a subtle gesture. Later, her expression seemed to say, "Come," the Emperor commanded. "The evening meal awaits. We have much to discuss." The Imperial Dining Hall was a masterpiece of Vorthak architecture, its curved walls creating perfect acoustics for conversation. The table itself was carved from a single piece of what appeared to be crystallized starlight, its surface reflecting the room's illumination in complex patterns. Marcus found himself seated between Prince Zethkara and a high-ranking military officer, directly across from Princess Lyrazeth. The arrangement allowed them to observe each other throughout the meal. Though protocol prevented extended private conversation, the food was surprisingly palatable, considering the differences in human and Vorthak physiology. The palace chefs had clearly researched human dietary requirements and adapted several dishes accordingly. "Captain Chen," the Emperor said during the second course, "I understand you operate independently rather than serving with any established military force." "That's correct, Your Majesty. I find that independent contracts allow me more flexibility in choosing my missions." "And how do you choose these missions? Financial compensation? Personal interest?" It was another test. Marcus chose his words carefully. "I prefer missions that make a positive difference. Rescuing prisoners, protecting civilians, stopping genuine threats to peace and stability. Admirable principles, but principles don't pay for starship maintenance or equipment upgrades. No, but they help me sleep at night." Princess Lyrazeth looked up from her meal. "An interesting philosophy. Do you believe that moral choices and practical necessities are always compatible?" "Not always," Marcus admitted. "But I've found that compromise in one area usually leads to compromise in others. Better to maintain clear standards and find creative solutions, even when those standards might cost you lucrative opportunities. Especially then." The Empress leaned forward slightly. "Young man, what is your opinion of arranged marriages?" The dining hall fell silent. Marcus was acutely aware that his answer would determine not just his own future, but Princess Lyrazeth's as well. He met the Empress's ancient gaze directly, I believe that marriage should be a partnership between equals, Your Majesty. Whether that partnership begins with love, respect, or mutual benefit matters less than whether both parties enter it freely and with honest intentions. And if both parties have different definitions of partnership? Marcus glanced at Princess Lyrazeth, who was watching him intently. Then they negotiate until they find common ground, or they admit incompatibility and part ways honorably. The Emperor's mandibles clicked sharply. There will be no parting of ways. This alliance serves the Empire's interests. With respect, Your Majesty, Marcus said carefully. Forced partnerships rarely serve anyone's long-term interests. They tend to create resentment rather than loyalty. Are you refusing the marriage? The question hung in the air like a blade. Marcus felt the weight of the entire room's attention, but his eyes remained fixed on Princess Lyrazeth. She gave him the slightest nod, so subtle he almost missed it. I'm suggesting that the princess and I should have the opportunity to determine our compatibility before making such a momentous decision, Marcus said. Perhaps a period of courtship would benefit everyone involved. The Emperor's eyes narrowed dangerously. You dare to dictate terms to me? Father. Princess Lyrazeth's voice cut through the tension like music. Perhaps Captain Chen's suggestion has merit. A courtship period would allow us to present a stronger public image when the marriage is announced. For a moment, Marcus thought the Emperor might explode. Then, unexpectedly, he began to laugh. The sound was deep and rich, filling the dining hall with genuine amusement. Clever, he said, looking between Marcus and his daughter. Both of you very well. You will have 1 week to determine your compatibility. But understand this, Captain Chen. If you reject my daughter after this courtship period, you will be declaring her unworthy of human consideration. The insult to our family would be severe. Marcus met the Emperor's gaze steadily. And if she rejects me, Your Majesty? That, the Emperor said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, would be impossible. Fourth-act females do not reject suitable males. Across the table, Princess Lyrazeth's expression remained carefully neutral, but Marcus caught the flash of defiance in her golden eyes. 1 week to determine compatibility. It would be the most important week of both their lives. The guest quarters assigned to Marcus were larger than his entire ship, with crystal windows that offered a panoramic view of the capital city. He stood at those windows now, watching the morning light paint the crystalline spires in shades of gold and silver, trying to process everything that had happened since his arrival. A soft chime announced a visitor. Marcus turned to find Princess Lyrazeth standing in his doorway, no longer wearing the formal robes from dinner. Instead, she wore practical clothing that looked almost military in design, and her scales had shifted to the deep blue that indicated relaxation. Your Highness, Marcus said, moving to bow formally. Please call me Lyra. If we're to be married in a week, we should probably dispense with excessive formality. She stepped into the room, and Marcus noticed she moved with the controlled grace of a trained fighter. I thought we should talk privately about our arrangement. I was hoping for the same thing. Marcus gestured toward the sitting area.
Can I offer you anything?
The hospitality suite is remarkably well stocked. Fourth-act tea if you have it. Lyra settled into one of the chairs, studying him as he prepared the beverages. You handled my father well last night. Most humans would have either backed down completely or challenged him directly. Neither approach would have ended well. Marcus handed her the tea, noting how she held the cup in 2 of her 4 hands while using the others expressively as she spoke. Your brother warned me about your father's strong personality. Father isn't cruel, but he's accustomed to absolute obedience. The fact that you negotiated for a courtship period rather than simply accepting or rejecting the marriage probably impressed him more than you realize. She sipped her tea thoughtfully. Tell me honestly, Marcus, what are your real feelings about this situation? The use of his first name felt significant. Marcus chose his words carefully. I think you're remarkable. Intelligent, capable, honest about what you want. Under normal circumstances, I'd consider myself lucky to have caught your attention. And under these circumstances, I'm concerned that neither of us has a real choice in the matter. Your father made it clear that rejection would have serious consequences for both of us. Lyra's scales shifted to a slightly darker blue. I've been analyzing those consequences. If you reject me, Father will likely declare me unmarriageable and exile me from the Empire. I would lose my titles, my research access, everything I've worked for. But if I reject you, Your father said that was impossible. Father says many things, but I've been reviewing imperial marriage law, and there are precedents for a female refusing marriage on grounds of fundamental incompatibility. Her golden eyes met his. The key word is fundamental. The incompatibility must be so severe that marriage would be harmful to both parties. Marcus leaned forward, intrigued. What kind of incompatibility? Religious differences, for instance. Conflicting life goals. Or... She paused, her scales shifting to a more golden hue that suggested mild embarrassment. Physiological incompatibility, which we have since our species can't produce offspring together. Exactly. But that incompatibility could be seen as an asset rather than a liability, depending on how we present it. Lyra set down her teacup and stood, moving to the window. I've been thinking about your proposal yesterday, the partnership arrangement. And? I think we could make it work, but it would require careful navigation of Vorthak's social expectations. She turned to face him. We would need to appear deeply committed to each other in public, while maintaining our independence in private. Marcus joined her at the window. That sounds like it could be complicated. Everything worthwhile is complicated. Lyra's mandibles twitched in that subtle smile. But I think we're both intelligent enough to handle complexity. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the city wake up below them. Marcus found himself studying Lyra's profile, noting the graceful curve of her neck, the way the morning light played across her scales. She was beautiful, but it was her mind that truly fascinated him. Can I ask you something personal? Marcus said, please. Why haven't you simply left, taken a ship and disappeared into deep space? You're clearly capable of taking care of yourself. Lyra's expression grew serious. Because running away would mean abandoning my research, my people, everything I care about. I've been working on defensive technologies that could protect civilian populations from pirate raids. My work has already saved thousands of lives in the outer colonies. And your father would shut down your research if you left. Immediately. He might even destroy my existing work out of spite. She looked at Marcus directly. I need the resources and authority that come with my royal status. Marriage to you would preserve both while giving me more independence than I've ever had. Marcus understood, and I would gain access to Vorthak technology and political protection that could make my operations far more effective. Precisely. We both win, and we do it on our own terms rather than our family's expectations. A new voice interrupted their conversation. Sister, you're up early. Prince Zethkara stood in the doorway looking amused. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Just getting to know each other, Lyra replied smoothly. As appropriate during a courtship period. Of course. The prince entered the room, his scales showing the light green coloration that indicated mischief. I actually came to invite Captain Chen to observe our morning military exercises. I thought he might find our training methods interesting. Marcus glanced at Lyra, who nodded encouragingly. I'd like that. I'm always interested in studying different combat techniques. Excellent. Lyra, you're leading the advanced tactical scenarios today, aren't you? I am. Her scales shifted to a more vibrant blue, indicating excitement. We're testing new small unit infiltration techniques against hardened positions. Perfect. Marcus can observe how my sister commands troops in action. It should be educational. An hour later, Marcus found himself on an observation platform overlooking the palace's main training complex. Below, 24 Vorthak soldiers prepared for what appeared to be a highly complex wargame scenario. Defensive positions had been constructed throughout the training area, complete with automated weapons and sensor networks. Princess Lyrazeth stood in the center of the attacker's staging area, reviewing holographic tactical displays with her team leaders. She had changed into military gear that enhanced her already impressive physical presence, and Marcus could see why she had earned the respect of veteran soldiers. Watch carefully, Prince Zethkara said. This scenario is based on the actual assault on Kessler Station last year. The defensive positions are stronger than what my sister's forces encountered in reality. She commanded the Kessler Station assault, personally led the boarding parties. 17 pirates killed, 43 captured, and 0 civilian casualties. The prince's voice carried obvious pride. The pirate leader surrendered directly to her rather than face capture by his own crew. The exercise began with startling intensity. Lyra's forces moved with precision and coordination that impressed even Marcus's experienced eye. She had divided her team into 3 assault groups, each attacking from a different angle while she coordinated their movements from a mobile command position. But what truly impressed Marcus was how she adapted when the defenders proved more resilient than expected. When the first assault group became pinned down, she didn't simply send reinforcements. Instead, she repositioned her entire force, creating new attack vectors that forced the defenders to split their attention. "She's good," Marcus murmured, watching Lyra personally lead a flanking maneuver that broke the defenders' line. "She's better than good," Prince Zethkara replied. "She's probably the finest tactical mind in the Empire. Father knows it, but he can't acknowledge it publicly without challenging traditional gender roles." The exercise concluded with Lyra's forces achieving complete victory in just under 30 minutes. As the soldiers reset the training area for the next scenario, she climbed to the observation platform to join Marcus and her brother. "Impressive work," Marcus said genuinely. "That flanking maneuver was particularly well executed. Thank you." Lyra's scales showed the golden tinge of pleasure at the compliment. "I noticed you were taking notes. Professional interest? Always. I've encountered similar defensive configurations in my work. Your approach was more elegant than anything I've tried. Perhaps we could compare tactical philosophy sometime. I'd be interested in human military thinking." Prince Zethkara cleared his throat pointedly. "Sister, you're flirting." "I am not flirting," Lyra protested, her scales shifting toward deeper blue. "I'm engaging in professional discourse with a fellow warrior." "If you say so." The prince's mandibles clicked with barely suppressed laughter. "I'll leave you two to your professional discourse." As her brother departed, Lyra turned to Marcus with an expression that seemed both amused and slightly embarrassed. "Was I flirting?" "A little," Marcus admitted. "But in a good way. It's nice to meet someone who shares my professional interests." "Is that what we're calling it? Professional interests?" Marcus studied her face, noting the way her golden eyes reflected the morning sunlight. "Among other things." 6 days into their courtship period, Marcus found himself in Princess Lyraseth's private laboratory, watching her work on what appeared to be a miniaturized shield generator. The device was elegant in its complexity, incorporating both Vorthak crystal technology and design principles he'd never seen before. The key breakthrough was realizing that personal shield systems fail because they try to stop everything. Lyra explained, her 4 hands moving with practiced precision as she adjusted the device's configuration. Instead, this design deflects energy weapons while allowing breathable atmosphere and communication signals to pass through. Marcus examined the technical specifications on her holographic display. The power requirements are remarkably low for this level of protection. Efficiency was crucial. A shield system that drains all your energy in the first minute of combat is useless. She activated the device and a faint shimmer surrounded her upper body. "Try to touch my shoulder." Marcus reached out and his hand met invisible resistance about an inch from her scales. The sensation was like pressing against flexible crystal. "Impressive. How long will the charge last?" "Approximately 47 minutes of continuous operation, or several hours of intermittent use." Lyra deactivated the shield and set the device aside. "I designed it specifically for civilian protection during pirate raids. Traditional military shields are too expensive and complex for widespread deployment. You mentioned this research was why you couldn't simply leave the Empire. This and dozens of other projects. Medical scanners that can detect diseases before symptoms appear. Communication systems that work reliably in hyperspace. Agricultural techniques that can increase crop yields on marginal worlds." Her scales shifted to the deep blue that indicated passionate commitment. "Every innovation could save lives, but only if I have the resources to develop and deploy them properly." Marcus nodded, understanding her dilemma more clearly than before. "And marriage to me preserves your access to those resources while giving you more autonomy to direct your research." "Exactly. Father wants me married and out of his political calculations. As long as I fulfill the social requirements of being a royal wife, he won't interfere with my work." She looked at him directly. "But that arrangement only functions if you're comfortable with having a wife who prioritizes her research over traditional domestic roles." "Lyra, I've spent 15 years living alone on a starship. I'm hardly looking for someone to manage my household and provide emotional support on demand." Marcus moved to examine another device on her workbench. "Besides, I find your work fascinating. I'd rather have a partner who challenges me intellectually than one who simply agrees with everything I say. Careful, Lyra said with that subtle smile. You're starting to sound genuinely interested in this marriage rather than simply resigned to it. Maybe I am. Marcus turned to face her, noting how the laboratory's lighting brought out the silver highlights in her scales. This past week has been educational. In what way? I'm learning that compatibility isn't just about shared interests or physical attraction. It's about finding someone whose strengths complement your weaknesses and whose goals align with your values. Lyra's scale shifted to the warm silver coloration he was beginning to associate with pleasure and contentment. And what have you concluded about our compatibility? That we could build something remarkable together, not the traditional marriage your father expects, and not the purely political arrangement we originally discussed. Something entirely new. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Lyra activated her personal display, and Prince Zethkara's image appeared in holographic form. Sister Captain Chen, Father requests your presence in the throne room immediately. He says it's time for your final decision. Lyra's scale shifted to a more neutral coloration. We'll be there shortly. The transmission ended, leaving them alone in the laboratory. For a moment, neither spoke, both aware that their week of courtship was ending and real decisions had to be made. Are you ready for this? Marcus asked. I've been ready since I was 12 years old and realized that my intelligence made me unmarriageable by traditional standards. Lyra moved to a storage cabinet and retrieved a small device that she clipped to her belt. The question is whether you're ready to marry an alien princess who will never be the compliant wife your species might expect. I stopped expecting compliance from women when I met my first female Marine drill instructor, Marcus replied with a grin. She taught me that the most dangerous warriors often come in unexpected packages. Flatterer. But Lyra's scales showed genuine pleasure at the compliment. They walked through the palace corridors together, their footsteps echoing in the vast spaces. Marcus noticed that several court officials watched them pass with obvious curiosity, and he wondered how much palace gossip their courtship had generated. The throne room was even more imposing than Marcus remembered, its crystalline architecture designed to inspire awe and reinforce imperial authority. Emperor Vorthiketh sat on his throne with the Empress beside him, both wearing formal court attire that emphasized their status and power. Daughter, Captain Chen. The Emperor's voice carried throughout the chamber without effort. Your week of courtship has concluded. It is time to declare your intentions. Marcus and Lyra approached the traditional 3-meter distance and stopped. Marcus could feel the weight of imperial attention, but his focus remained on the woman beside him. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Father, Lyra said, her voice carrying the musical clarity that commanded attention. Captain Chen and I have determined that we are highly compatible. We wish to proceed with the marriage alliance. And you, Captain Chen? Do you accept my daughter as your wife, with all the responsibilities and honors that such a union entails? Marcus looked at Lyra, seeing not just a brilliant scientist and capable warrior, but a woman who had chosen to trust him with her future. Your Majesty, I would be honored to marry Princess Lyrazeth. She is remarkable in every way, and I believe we can build a partnership that strengthens both our peoples. The Emperor nodded approvingly. Excellent. The marriage ceremony will take place in 3 days, followed by a reception for the diplomatic community. Captain Chen, you will be granted honorary citizenship in the Empire and the rank of Imperial Consort. Your Majesty is generous, Marcus replied formally. But the Empress leaned forward, her ancient eyes studying both of them with uncomfortable intensity. A moment, husband. I wish to understand the nature of this partnership our daughter has chosen. Marcus felt Lyra tense beside him, but her voice remained steady. What do you wish to know, Mother? This courtship has been observed closely. You spend your time in laboratories and training facilities rather than gardens and art galleries. You discuss military tactics rather than poetry. You behave as professional colleagues rather than romantic partners. The Empress's scales shifted to the golden hue that indicated sharp attention. Tell me, daughter, is this a marriage of love or convenience? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus realized that the Empress was testing not just their commitment, but the honesty of their arrangement. A false answer could unravel everything they had worked toward. Mother, Lyra said carefully, It is a marriage of respect, compatibility, and shared purpose. Captain Chen values my intelligence rather than being threatened by it. He supports my research rather than trying to redirect my interest toward traditionally feminine pursuits. We complement each other's strengths and understand each other's goals. And love? The Empress pressed. Marcus stepped forward slightly. Your Majesty, love built on mutual respect and genuine compatibility has a stronger foundation than love based purely on emotion. We may not have begun with romantic passion, but we have something that can grow into deeper affection over time. The Empress studied them for a long moment, then began to laugh. The sound was rich and warm, filling the throne room with unexpected joy. Honest, she said approvingly. Refreshingly honest. Most couples claim eternal devotion while knowing nothing about each other. You two acknowledge building a partnership based on genuine understanding. She turned to her husband. I approve of this match. Emperor Vorthketh's mandibles clicked with what might have been relief. Then it is settled. Prepare for the wedding ceremonies.
And Captain Chen?
Yes, Your Majesty. Welcome to the family. I suspect you and my daughter will find ways to surprise us all. As they left the throne room, Lyra walked close enough to Marcus that their arms occasionally brushed. Her scales showed the warm silver coloration that had become familiar over their week together. So, she said quietly, we're really doing this. Apparently we are. Marcus found himself smiling. Any second thoughts? Only about the wedding ceremony. Traditional Vorthak marriage rituals can be elaborate. How elaborate?
6 hours of ceremonial exchanges followed by a reception that will last until dawn. Lyra's mandibles twitched in amusement.
I hope you have stamina, husband-to-be. I've survived worse, Marcus replied. Besides, I'll have an excellent partner to help me through it.